Welcome to the Creative Writing Career Podcast, where you learn how to make writing more than a hobby. Make it a career. And here are your hosts, Stephan Bugaj, Justin Sloan, and Kevin Tumlinson.
Hi, welcome to the Creative Writing Career Podcast. I'm Justin Sloan, and I'm here with Stephan Bugaj and Kevin Tumlinson. And before we go further, let's make sure I got Stephan's name right.
Yes.
Cool. All right. That for other listeners out there who
How many years has it been, by the way, since you guys have known each other?
Just like a year and a half, something like that.
Yeah. That's a long time to go without knowing how to pronounce your name, Stephan.
Oh, there's still people at Pixar who have known me for 12, 13 years that still call me Steven. So
cool.
I'm sorry, man. I'll probably call you Steven at least once then, just so that I can be the Pixar group.
Yeah, just to screw with them. Yeah, so that's our introduction to who we are. You know, we're gonna approach this podcast in a fun manner. We're not gonna be scripted. We're just gonna be like talking about the industries and our experience in them. And so to get us rolling in that, Stephan already mentioned he was at Pixar, and we'll each go into kind of our introductions. But before we do that, how you guys doing?
I'm doing good.
Awesome.
I love being up at 8 in the morning. It's awesome.
Are you not normally up at 8 in the morning, Stephan?
I have a 5-week-old kid, so I'm normally up at 2 in the morning, 4 in the morning, 6 in the morning, 8 in the morning.
Yeah, I've exchanged plenty of emails with Stephan at like 3 a.m. and either he's not asleep yet or he's just woken up, one of the two.
Okay, all right. I don't have any kids keeping me up, so I have no real excuse for why I'm always up. But I guess that's good. It's a good habit to be in if you're an author.
Yeah, I'm happy to call you too at like 4:30 in the morning.
I'd appreciate it if you didn't. I actually don't get any writing done any other time of the day. So like between like 4 and 8 my time, which I'm central. You guys are on the West Coast and I'm in Houston. You know, those are my prime writing hours. So I hate when people try to schedule things in that time, and I get tons of people who do.
Nice. Well, yeah, so let's avoid that. So jumping into what this podcast is, this is our first episode. We're out here trying to share our advice with you. And so to give you a little sense of who we are and what this podcast is about, we're going to jump into it. It's going to be a 30-minute podcast. That's our goal. We'll see if that evolves one way or the other over the years. And to get started, I'm Justin Sloan. I work at Telltale Games, where I've written on such games as Game of Thrones, The Walking Dead Michonne miniseries, Tales from the Borderlands, and I've done some kind of design and prep work for Minecraft Story Mode. I'm also an author. I have a few books out there, a few more coming out. I'm really excited about my Allie Strom series. It's called the first one, Allie Strom and the Ring of Solomon. And I love it. Book 2 is coming out a month later. I'm aiming for book 3 to come out in January. We'll see, November, December, January. And I also do some screenwriting. And I'm going to be a panelist at the Austin Film Festival, which is 2015 for those of you listening in the future. I'm pretty excited about that. So hopefully I'll see some of you there. We'll go much more into detail on that soon. But Stephan, you want to kick off next?
Sure, no problem. I'm Stephan Bugaj. I'm a screenwriter and writer of other transmedia type of projects, video games, virtual reality, and so on. And so I was at Pixar for 12 years, working on both the visual filmmaking side and then towards the end of my run, developing a couple of feature projects with Mark Andrews, director of Brave. And then I left to go to Telltale Games, where I was creative director in charge of all writing and directing. And in that role, worked on second season of Walking Dead, Wolf Among Us, setting up the seasons 4 and early episodes of Game of Thrones, Tales From the Borderlands, and a couple of things that are no longer in development there. Live action film that is currently has director John H. Lee, who's a Korean director that's done several films in Asia and is looking to do his first American film, Attached, and now it's seeking financing. I'm developing a animated project for Marza Animation Planet and a bunch of other indie live action and animation projects that I'm working on, as well as ongoing game stuff. I just wrote a game for a company called Penny Pop, and out there now as a Ronin, a free agent, working on a variety of different projects for different companies.
Awesome. How about you, Kevin? What's your background?
Well, I'm Kevin Tumlinson, and I am currently outclassed by my other two hosts on practically everything that they've done in their careers, especially Stephan, who just seems to own the career that I always wanted. But I'm an author. I have, I think at this count, about 24 books available, and more to come. And I do, I'm a podcast host in a couple, like 2 or 3 different podcasts now, most notably the Wordslinger podcast, which is one I do every week. And then one that I do with Justin, actually, and also Nick Thacker, another author friend of ours, which is the Self-Publishing Answers podcast. And, I've done a bit of screenwriting, but I've mostly done documentary work, which is a little different, not quite the same as, scripting a game or scripting something for TV or what. Well, I script for TV. It's a totally different kind of process, though. But so nothing huge. My credit, though, I don't have like Game of Thrones or anything on my credits yet. We'll have to work on that.
Hey, 20 books is nothing to shy away from.
Yeah, that's probably my biggest claim to fame is being prolific, or at least working on being prolific.
And then me and Kevin Kevin and I are working on a novel together that with Nick Thacker, and then right. Kevin and I might attempt to adapt that as a screenplay as well. So that'll be kind of interesting. Yeah, our linking factor there. And then also Stephan and I worked on a book, Creative Writing Career 2. He wrote the foreword to book 1, and then he jumped on as a co-author on book 2. And that should be out by the time this airs. Actually, the print book could be out pretty soon. I like to kind of release that first because actually that allows people to leave reviews before the pre-order hits, which will hit on the 15th of October, which will probably be after this. This will probably air after the fact for those of you listening. So anyway, that's kind of how we're all connected. And that's where the idea of this podcast came from. We were talking, we were saying, like, wouldn't it be awesome if there's not just for self-published authors or people who want to write video games or screenwriters, but a podcast that kind of covers all of that. You know, it's about the hybrid author. It's about the author who does everything, the multimedia author, if you want to call it that. And we thought, well, we already wrote some books on that called Creative Writing Career, which covers how to get into all the different styles of writing. And it includes interviews with some amazing authors. It has Sean Platt in there. It has John August in there. It has Anthony Birch on the video game side. The other two are a novelist and a screenwriter, respectively. And so we wanted to get out there and talk about all these different media that you could write for and maybe bring on some awesome interviewees, such as the people mentioned, or, we'll probably start off going with some people that are not in the book. So we give you an extra little flavor of what's in the world, because then you could read the book and listen to the podcast and it won't be too much overlap. And we have some, awesome generic advice on each of those, of course, and we'll probably be updating you on what we hear going on in each of these industries as we go. What do you guys think? Any other backgrounds why you wanted to get involved in the podcast, or what you think we could do going forward?
I was pausing because I have a tendency to jump in and start talking, and I didn't want to burn Stephan out before he had a chance to talk.
Jump away.
We need like a hand raising button. Is there a hand raising button in
we
Skype?
We need some kind of signal.
If only there were video.
I think that covers pretty much what the sort of dream for this podcast. That idea, because I've been a writer practically my whole life. I mean, I started writing professionally when I was 12 years old, which is basically just I got paid to write words. That didn't mean I was really making a living at it at the time. But there are a lot of avenues for writers out there, some of which people may not have thought about. And that's one of the things that intrigued me about this idea, was to give people sort of inside look and a behind the scenes look at the various writing careers of people and ways that they can use that creative talent to make a living.
Yeah, I think all that sounds about right to me. I also like the melodious sound of my own voice now. And,
I'm a fan of my own voice too.
You guys both have the deep voice thing going on, of course. I mean,
also, like for me, there's a lot of things out there that are purporting to offer people advice about a career in writing, and a lot of it takes the form of, pay me a lot of money that you made at your crappy cafe job working your butt hours a day to earn, and I will give you some pithy advice that you could have gotten for free on the internet. And I anything that can be done to counter those kinds of people who are preying off of hopeful artists of any kind, I'm all for, because, I early on, when I was younger and stupider, made the mistake of buying into some of that, and it's a huge waste of money. And there are certainly good people out there who sell valid services for artists, critiques, and so on. But a lot of the career quick stuff, in 15 minutes, I'll tell you how to sell a script.
Yeah.
And all that thing is a lot of nonsense. So I think a free avenue for some unvarnished career advice is going to be helpful to a lot of people. And excuse me. And it's not the only one out there. Of course, there's John O'Nuck's website and a bunch of other things. But I think the podcast format is pleasing for a lot of people, and you can consume it in your car without crashing into anything.
Yeah, presumably.
Hopefully, once in a while when I scream, you might get a little startled. But it's just to keep you active and keep you awake. I
will say you guys bring a sort of unique and interesting perspective to this, by the way, because you guys are kind of in the heart of what a lot of people consider to be the creative writing industry. Other than books, people love the idea of, television and film as a career. And you guys do game writing, which I think it's funny how that's been around forever, but it's still sort of an emerging creative career in a lot of people's eyes. You don't think of that first. So that's an interesting perspective. I can't wait to kind of explore that world a little.
Yeah, and I'll just say that on that note, a lot of people who've been going into the video game industry are talking about how Hollywood is perceiving it, and a lot of them are saying like their agents are saying you got to go into the game industry. A lot of their friends are saying, "Oh my God, you're going to go work on those games. That's awesome. You got to do that. You got to get that paycheck because you go into the game industry and you can get a constant paycheck and not have to be, unless you're a freelancer, not have to be out there, hustling every minute trying to find your next gig."
Right.
Although compared to the government and military, which is kind of some of my other background, it definitely feels that way still. Even if you have a permanent job, you're always like, oh, I'm on the tip of my toes. I'm on ice.
Yeah.
It's definitely a different feeling. So that kind of relates, by the way. I'll throw it real quick. My background, as I was saying, the writing side, but I was also in the Marines for 5 years, and I was in the government for a few years doing post-conflict reconstruction and stabilization. And so I've been interviewing a lot of military veterans who've gone into writing careers and other creative careers as well. And we'll be doing another podcast on that. So people stay tuned. We'll probably do some cross motion and whatnot. And maybe I'll bring some awesome veterans over to this podcast. In my book, I interviewed Kel Simons, who's done some cool work for games like Game of Thrones. And also he wrote like the live action version of Aladdin. He was a writer on that and done some really cool projects and comic writing and whatnot. And so I'm sure there'll be some cross hibernation there. And that's, Kevin keeps kissing our butts, but let me kiss Kevin a little bit. He has this awesome podcast called Wordslinger. And, on there, he's interviewed some amazing people like Andy Weir, and he just did an interview with Mark Andrews. Is that the right name? Sorry. No, Mark Dawson. Sorry.
Mark Dawson.
Mark Andrews is the one that Stefan mentioned at Pixar.
That's funny because I'm actually interviewing someone named Mark Andrews later in the month. So I'm like, did I already record that? That's weird.
So it was accurate. I'm accurate. Okay. I'm messing up names. I'm horrible at names. You guys can jump in every once in a while and slap me virtually and say, Justin, stop saying that wrong name over and over again, because I'll do it. But the point is, Kevin's done some awesome interviews, and like you mentioned, he's done some 20 books or so, and he has definitely some cool stuff to his name too. So be happy.
Man. Yeah, I will. I was just going to go off and quietly kill myself in the corner for not having written on Game of Thrones, but now I think I'll stick around. Stefan, hey. You said you're kind of Ronin, so you do a little bit of freelancing right now, right? Or no? Did I totally get that wrong?
No, yeah, I do.
You do? Okay.
I mean, I also have a job, which is I'm vice president of creative for Hanson Robotics, which is a company that makes humanoid robots, and I'm doing robot personality design and developing robot-oriented stories and TV shows and so on. But for the game and movie and television and VR and so on writing nowadays, it's specs and freelance projects.
All right, so you're going to be an interesting brain to pick. Because my freelance career is very different because it was mostly copywriting. And so I don't see there's got to be a bridge there, because guys like me are out there looking to become guys like you who are writing for, who are brought in as consultants or, working on spec scripts and actually getting them sold and things like that. So that's going to be an interesting take. And Justin, your work at Telltale Games, just as a start, I think what's interesting about that stuff is the tie-in with a major media phenomenon like Game of Thrones or The Walking Dead. Like you become associated with that because of the game, and there's a little bit of that gold kind of rubbing off, I think, which is attractive to a lot of writers, I think.
I hope so. And I think this is one reason we're kind of pushing this topic, is I want people to keep an open mind and not just think, I want to be a writer, so that means I'm going to write for Pixar, because that's a lofty goal.
Yeah.
Or I want to be an author, so I'm going to just sit at home and write novels and suddenly be a millionaire someday, because that is also a lofty goal that is very hard to achieve, even though we hear some awesome success stories, and we'll push that, like the realities of the industry in the next podcast episode. But what I wanted to say is, keep an open mind and look at all these different, like maybe a big piece of advice from like John August and those people on script notes is, if you want to get into screenwriting for movies, well, maybe you should consider writing for games, because some people have gone that route. You're going to learn a lot.
Yeah.
To be honest, when I first started looking at writing for games, I kind of saw it as an avenue, kind of like the alternative to going to film school. I was like, well, I've already got 2 master's degrees. One's in creative writing. I could go get another MFA at screenwriting for the purposes of like networking and whatnot. I ended up doing the UCLA certificate program instead. It's awesome. We could talk about that sometime. But I saw it kind of as like a film school where I'm going to learn about writing and improve my craft. And when I started really looking into it, I was like, holy crap, this could be awesome. Some of these games out here, like the Walking Dead games, like Life is Strange, like Beyond Two Souls, I think is one of those. Like, these are great storytelling mechanisms. It definitely should not be looked at as, just an avenue to something else, like to become a screenwriter, like some people advise. Like, it's definitely its own beast. If you're thinking, oh, I just want to do this so that I can get into something else, you're not going to be as competitive as all these people out there who are 100% obsessed with these games and are passionate about them and know them. Like, this is all part of one big, in my mind, writing career. And that's how you have to approach it, I'm writing novels, I'm writing video games, I'm writing screenplays because I love to write, and I don't want to limit myself to any one of those.
Right. I will say this, though. Here's where one of the big appeals of this podcast for me is, when I got into writing, I kind of fell into this. We'll say I fell in with the wrong crowd. Okay. Because what I got told early on was, there's no hope for you to get into something that's fun and creative. Like, you don't even dream about writing scripts or writing novels. Don't bother. Go, use your writing skills as a copywriter and write, annual reports and case studies and white papers and garbage like that. And while there's some fulfillment that you can get from that. Yeah, thanks for making me rethink my entire life. You can get a sort of, warm and fuzzy from doing that kind of work sometimes. But, I spent a large part of my career kind of feeling like I was doing the wrong kind of writing. And, but I did it because there's that mentality of, I'll just do this until I break big, and then I can go do whatever I want, which is completely false. And what I would like to do is talk to the guys who are out there who have talent, who have skill, who have passion, and want to actually learn how to do this stuff. And maybe they are making their living as a copywriter or some other, they're in something else entirely. Maybe they're a waiter. Maybe they're, whatever you're doing. I want to be able to encourage and inspire those people to get out there and find that avenue to get in. And what you were saying, by the way, it was sort of the, like, check your level of commitment kind of idea. Like, I remember years and years ago, I went to a job fair at my college. And I was getting a master's at the time, and they had a booth there from the FBI. And, you think the only experience most of us have with the FBI is TV and movies, So I'm talking to him like, I never really considered a career in the FBI. It might be kind of cool to do that. I don't know if you guys need someone like me. And the recruiter, a woman who was not real thrilled to be there, I think, but she informed me that the FBI isn't something you go into just because you think it might be a neat idea. Like you spend your whole life dreaming about going in and training and getting into that. And I think it's the same idea with, if you love games, if you love films, if you love books, you probably spent a large chunk of your life on the side probably, but you probably spent a lot of time cultivating something that could be considered, a skill or talent that would drive you in that direction. And that's the kind of people who get ahead in any of these industries.
For sure.
That's my summation of it.
Yeah. Have you seen the trailer for Quantico, by the way?
Yes, I have. Yes.
Well, I guarantee if you'd seen that back in the day, you would have been 100% committed because those people are all hot as hell. And,
I noticed they keep showing that one chick getting out of the pool, like I just run that on a loop over and over again.
It's just my screensaver. It just keeps doing that. No. But my comment there being like, what the hell? Come on, if that's how Quantico is.
But we know that that's not the reality of that. And in a way,
they're all ugly.
Yeah. And in the same way though, being a writer has a similar sort of, romanticized mystique to it because, the only writers you ever really encounter are the ones on screen, who are generally broken in some way, but somehow living this fantastic life. I tell you, I want to murder everyone who ever writes about a writer who just wrote one book and is, a bestseller and jet setting and that sort of thing. Like I see that all the time.
Yeah, because it's not the reality, right?
It's not the reality. I don't know any writers like that. Yeah.
It's the same thing with the video game world. I meet a lot of people who are like, oh, you just came out of nowhere and like you were in the military and the government, and so why are you here? But dude, just shut up. Like I was playing video games since I was a kid. I wrote like a story with my friend and tried to pitch it to game companies when I was 12. Not that it went anywhere, but still, it's like we weren't just sitting around doing nothing. And then I was writing books like crazy. Right. I wrote screenplays. I wrote like 10 or 12 screenplays, in the first year I was writing and just like busting them out and trying to learn and do everything. So it's not like we were just suddenly twiddling our thumbs, sitting around shooting people in the military and suddenly we're discovered or whatever.
Well, and
and I'll say real quick too, go ahead.
No, I was going to interject that because it almost sounds like we're saying if you weren't doing this stuff all along, then you shouldn't bother. But that's not the case either.
No, like get started now. For sure.
Yeah, if you're interested in this, then you should. What's that?
Justin mentioned the word discovered, and I want to point out that like that in itself is a myth, right? That's like a 50s myth. Writers don't get discovered anymore. In fact, nowadays, agents, producers, editors, and so on, their corporate bosses mandate to them is basically to say no. And so writers, they're not out saying, how can I fill my already overflowing stable of non-working writers
right.
so that I can lose more money? You've got to hustle. You've got to make yourself appealing by doing things. Like no one, the days of, I wrote this one amazing spec that I spent years and years writing this one amazing spec and I got discovered. If they ever were around, they're certainly not around now.
Yeah. Yeah. I only know a couple of authors who might qualify as having been, quote, discovered, but it wasn't like they wrote one book and that hit. Except, well, no. Okay, I know one guy that did happen to. So it does happen.
If you write one book and hit, you've already done something. But if you write one book and hit, you've done something.
That's true.
And put it out there.
I think
the discovery myth is that someone will find you and do all that work for you.
Right. Okay.
Right? The discovery myth is like, I'll be coming out of my writing program, or like, I'm writing in the cafe and someone strolls up to me and
you're a writer.
Says, so you're a writer. Let me take a look at your stuff. Amazing. Let me give you a career. Here, I have one on a silver platter in my duster pocket.
We're going to have to start doing that to people. Just walk up. In fact, next time I'm in LA, I'm going to put on a suit. I'm literally going to go to every Starbucks and just start handing out cards and saying, I like the cut of your jib, kid. You look like you got skills and moxie.
Yeah, that'd be rude.
That would be rude, but
playing with our emotions. Yes, I wanted to say too, for those listeners who are like, well, I'm trying to do this coffee blogging thing. You're saying it's a bad idea? I don't think we're saying that because Kevin has definitely made a career as being an author, right? Like you've been a full-time writer, more than us in a way, in the sense that, I've been at Telltale for a year and a half, but it's like a 9 to 5, and you've been doing something. You've kind of been like your own boss, right? Like freelancing and going out there and doing your own thing, and that's kind of awesome in its way.
Well, it has its ups and downs, obviously. I mean, I have to hustle to get clients, and I'm kind of over having clients, right? Like I want readers, I don't want clients. But the realities of being a writer today are, marketing is the real skill that you have to cultivate. Like, unfortunately, we live in this culture now where everyone is a writer. I can't tell you how many times I've had really nice paying, long-term gigs, freelance or otherwise, as a writer with, a corporation or an agency. And, whenever things get tight, the writers are really the first group that goes. Marketing takes the biggest hit when things get tight in a corporation. And when marketing takes the big hit, they get rid of the writers because there's this attitude that everyone can write, which we know is not necessarily true. But on the other side of that, the way you differentiate yourself now as a writer is with your marketing skills, and some of that is, there's a component of luck in that, but I mean, really it's just hard work. It's just putting in the time, and that sucks. And most people don't want to do it, which is why it's falling through the cracks for a lot of authors. Mm-hmm. I'm guilty of that too.
Yeah.
We should probably go ahead.
I was just gonna say we're getting close to the end of our time, so we should probably. But this is just like we said, an introduction, a taste of what we're going to be talking about. And on our next episode, we're going to be kind of talking about the realities of the industry, going into more details about these, and focusing on writing books and comics and games and video and screenplays and other media. But before we wrap up, let's see if we had anything that we thought was kind of cool going on in the industry lately. If not, guys, no worries, I'm putting you on the spot here. But or something else, just something you saw on Twitter or whatnot. I'll start so you guys have time to think in case you have anything. But I saw today that I think it's the last company. Maybe people will correct me. That's fine. But that prints the library cards. What are those called? The filing system for checking where books are in the libraries.
The Dewey Decimal System.
I don't know. the printer that prints all those cards for the libraries. How you used to go in there and you have to pull out this long file of all these cards to the book that you wanted. Yeah. Apparently they're stopping to do that now. So there's an article saying like the library card system is dead finally. Like not library cards that used to check them out, but the actual, you know what I'm talking about.
The card catalog system.
The card catalogs. Supposedly those are finally on their way out. It's looking like.
Huh. I thought that was already gone. So that's...
Yeah. I'm sure a lot of listeners are like, what is he talking about? Like, what? Come on, Google search or whatever, go in the library and type it in. What? But anyway, that used to be a thing, guys.
I thought libraries just now being brain drew by, but...
Yeah. Well, they do have some crazy apps nowadays, like Overdrive and stuff, where you can just go in there and get library cards on your phone.
Well, you still have to have a membership to a library, to a local library to do it. But yeah, it's still there. But speaking of libraries, then today I interviewed Alanka Rukalska. Which I'm going to butcher her name every single time I say it. But she is an author and a marketer and an entrepreneur. She just started something called Library Bub. And you can find it at librarybub.com. Uh-huh. And what they do is if you are an award-winning or best-selling indie author, you can, it works a little bit like BookBub where you can sign up and you have to show, social proof that you've accomplished this. But if you get in, you pay their rate and they will promote you to, hundreds of libraries in the U.S. And that's kind of cool because libraries are kind of the nut that a lot of authors are trying to crack alongside bookstores. So if you are a novelist or nonfiction author, I guess, as well, and you've got, a bestseller status to your name, it doesn't have to be the New York Times, she said, because I asked her about, because I recently hit, I didn't hit number one, but I did hit, in the bestseller range on Amazon, and not Amazon, Apple iBooks for science fiction. So I think I qualify. So she's going to check me out. But yeah, if you've got bestseller or award winning and you're legitimate about it, then you might be able to get into a whole bunch of libraries and small presses.
I will definitely check that out.
Yeah.
Anything from you, Stephan?
Sure. Yeah. So I'll just leave with a bit of final advice along the theme of the podcast. Earlier, we were talking about the romanticism of writing, and writing or any other creative career, writing, filmmaking, being a game developer, being an artist is a long-term commitment to your passion and to facing a lot of failure and rejection and persevering, because no one ever. And in the final analysis, if you're looking for the romanticism, there are much easier ways to be an alcoholic.
That's true.
Great. Yeah, well, I think we're out of time, guys. So let's go ahead and wrap up. And this has been the Creative Writing Career Podcast. And thank you so much for listening.
Thanks so much for listening to the Creative Writing Career Podcast with your hosts, Stephan Bugaj, Justin Sloan, and Kevin Tumlinson. We'll catch you next time.